I have a very politically incorrect question for you, one that has remained unanswered until now. Are men better store managers than women? I think this is an important topic because there are far fewer female store managers than male ones. And in any case, it's a subject that interests me, especially because the S in CSR stands for social. And today, I'm going to give you the answer to this question. First, a few figures on the topic of promoting women to management and executive positions in our sector of large-scale retail, which has historically been very male-dominated. At AOL de l'Est, the percentage of female managers has increased by about 1 point per year since 2020. Just like at Mercadona, as you can see on the screen now, but not at Walmart, since 2024 saw a severe drop. To return to the rather good performers in the group, the percentage of women appointed to key positions at Carrefour has been steadily increasing for several years, as you can see, just like the number of women in the company's top 200 still at Carrefour. At Tesco, the number of women in executive positions now reaches 30%. And then, to return to my topic, it's with our Norwegian friends at Nordea Group that since 2024, women have held 50% of store manager positions. So why are all these great European brands advancing women into management and leadership positions? Well, there are several explanations. First of all, there's no reason why only men should be in leadership positions, because science has never shown that they are better. In fact, research has rather established that gender diversity in executive committees is a factor for better performance. Next, I think that women, or at least a very large majority of women, have proven managerial talent. And in a very people-intensive sector, with a high turnover rate, well, it makes sense to promote many women to leadership positions. There's another reason. The clientele of our stores is mostly female, so it's not illogical to have female store managers facing this clientele who may possibly understand them better. There are also regulatory reasons. The RICS law in France, for example, which is fairly little known and dates from 2021, sets targets for balanced representation in management bodies, with a goal of 30% women by 2027 and 40% by 2030 for companies with more than 1,000 employees. And the penalty could be up to 1% of the total payroll. For Carrefour, that would amount to more than 60 million euros. And then there's the scrutiny from investors, NGOs, and consumer associations who see gender parity in management roles as only natural. So let me return to my question. Are men better store managers than women? And to try to answer that, we need numbers. And I was fortunate enough to be able to conduct this research with a major European retailer who shared with me a large amount of data on 235 supermarkets over nearly 18 months. So, what criteria did we analyze in our research to help us answer our improper question? First, I chose shelf availability. Personally, I really like this indicator because it reflects a certain level of managerial rigor at the local level, even though stockouts are not just a store issue. And since I observed more than 200 stores over a long period, I consider that I have smoothed out all the upstream causes of stockouts. So I'm only seeing what pertains to the store itself and therefore to management. And here you can see in blue the evolution of shelf availability in stores managed by women and in orange by men, which are fairly close together, except for one store that consistently lags far behind. But I think there are other reasons for this underperformance. And now, the evolution of shelf availability in a dynamic way, that is from one week to the next. So let me return to my question. Is there a difference in performance depending on the gender of the store manager? Well, no, at least not based on this criterion. That's what you can easily see from the two tables displayed on the screen. On the left, the average shelf availability by gender, blue for women, orange for men, and on the right, the average weekly change in this indicator by gender, full group art. So, for this first indicator observed across 235 stores over nearly 18 months, the performance of men and women is exactly the same. Now let's look at another topic that I also consider to reflect management quality, shrinkage and food waste. You've understood my research method. I track the evolution of this indicator over 18 months, first in a static way, meaning in monetary terms, and that's what you see here. And then dynamically, meaning in terms of monthly changes. Then I calculate the average for stores managed by men and those managed by women, looking at the evolution and as a percentage of revenue to make things comparable and to neutralize the impact of potential outliers related to certain stores that inevitably perform poorly, particularly due to the type of their clientele. That's what's now shown on the screen. And what do we observe? Well, here too, the performance of men and women is the same. So now let's move on to the topic of revenue, which is really the main issue. And as you can see on this graph, in blue is the weekly revenue trend for stores managed by women, and in orange for those managed by men. Well, it's pretty lively, right? That's the seasonality of the food retail business. So I calculate the average for each of my groups, and then I ask the question, do stores managed by men achieve better commercial performance? Logically, yes, since they manage the majority of the stores and moreover, the largest ones. Well, no, look. The blue and orange curves evolve in a symmetrically parallel way. So on this criterion as well, there is no outperformance by one group or the other. In conclusion, you now have the answer to my question, my politically incorrect question. There is no observed performance gap between men and women managing a supermarket, at least not on these three key indicators. Because now I'd like to get you to work and make you think. Because there's another social issue when we talk about large-scale retail, turnover, meaning staff rotation. It's a very important indicator, and of course, it's closely monitored by management, since constantly recruiting and training is exhausting and very costly. On the other hand, lacking rigor in recruitment and or not letting go of underperformers is not a sign of managerial excellence. So I also conducted a study on this same sample over 18 months regarding the evolution of 12-month turnover. And here comes the big surprise. Take a look. 12-month turnover drops by 6 points in stores managed by men and by only 2 points in stores managed by women. That's not insignificant. Now, I have a few ideas about the reason why, but I'll share them with you a bit later. Also, I'd love to read your thoughts on LinkedIn or by email at juraniesic.fr. Meanwhile, and to conclude this whole section on diversity and therefore on women's access to store manager positions, which let me remind you, I consider to be the core role in the retail industry. And aside from this issue of turnover trends, we have not established any evidence of one gender outperforming the other. We couldn't have hoped for better news today.